Hello everyone, my name is Nam Din and I'll be doing the topic of doping in sports today. Well, first off, we have to define sports. And as per the textbook, sports are a well-established, officially governed, competitive physical activities in which participants are motivated by internal and external rewards. By internal rewards, it would be what we want as people, and external are like the trophies or money that we receive. And then I believe there are three factors to this. So there's competition, fairness, and regulations that help define sports. So what drives sports is the competition, is the competition to win and the obstacles and challenges that we go through ultimately provide us with the best internal reward. When we win, we get an external reward, but that's not the most important thing to most players. So, for example, winning is not fun if it's easy. So, if I were to play a pickup game of basketball and I play it against a whole bunch of 7, 8-year-olds, I don't know how long you could play before you would get bored. So, every time you want to play with some people who are around the same uh, level you are, so it would make it exciting and exhilarating. So, moving on to the next points. What makes sports exciting? Um, Fairness to me would make it exciting because there's a level playing field, and the level playing field helps players come together. And everyone is on the same level, so that's the best thing. Winning in an unfair manner ruins the game for spectators and participants because unfair advantages leads to unfair landslides. So, and then if there's a person with an unfair advantage, then the person would feel guilt because it you don't feel good about winning, and we'll lead on to more of that later with doping and stuff. What makes sports fair is that there is a set guideline when playing a sport. That if you break the guidelines or the rule book, then you'll be punished. And so, one point I want to make right now, or a comparison I want to make right now, is the Olympics versus the NFL. So the Olympics is extremely strict in their ruling, while the NFL is extremely lenient in their ruling. And we'll see that later with all the athletes. And what is doping? Doping refers to the use of banned substances in competitive sports. And another term for this are PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. It's another term used by athletes to improve their athletic performances. A lot of athletes include Julian Edelman, Lance Armstrong, and the rushing doping scandals, Ben Johnson, and where athletes dope the most, or where it's covered the most, is at the Olympics. There are six main types of PEDs that are used in sports. That's blood doping, anabolic steroids, human growth hormone, stimulants, beta blockers, and diuretics. And moving on to the next one. Blood doping. So the basic goal of blood doping is to increase red blood cell mass. And when you increase red blood cell mass, that increases the amount of red blood cells you have. So your red blood cells can bind to more oxygen, and it will help you uh, get oxygen to the rest of your body easier. So there's three main types of blood doping: erythropoietin, which is um, when athletes use the substance erythropoietin. They inject it themselves, and that is a naturally occurring substance in our body that helps us produce more red blood cells. And synthetic oxygen carriers work a little of the same way as what erythropoietin produce, which are red blood cells. So the synthetic oxygen carriers would help carry oxygen, basically. And then lastly, there are blood transfusions. So blood transfusions are when players take out blood when their hemoglobin levels are high, because hemoglobin is is a molecule that binds to oxygen, and they take it out when it's high, and they inject it to themselves once again when they are ready to compete. And all of these are banned. Another type of doping are anabolic steroids, and these drugs are derived from testosterone, which is a hormone that is produced in the testes of males. And there are two types of anabolic steroids. There's the exogenous steroids, which are synthetically created, which means they're created outside and not naturally occurring. And there are endogenous steroids, which are a naturally occurring substance in our body. And that's like testosterone produced in the testes of males. And then they increase muscle mass, reduce body fat, and reduce the recovery time. And most commonly, anabolic steroids are used by bodybuilders to help them increase their muscle mass extremely fast and reduce their recovery time. And then another doping thing is human growth hormone. It increases the number of red blood cells, it boosts heart function, it makes more energy by stimulating the breakdown of fat. It also increases muscle mass, strength, and tissue repair, just like anabolic steroids. And the way you take these are by injection. That includes human growth hormone and anabolic steroids. One risk is the excessive growth of head, feet, and hands. And an example of Peyton Manning, I'm not sure if it's real or not, but his forehead grew in 10 years. So there had to have been some type of doping used. It doesn't make any sense. Then there are stimulants, and stimulants directly affect the central nervous system. They increase heart rate, blood pressure, metabolism, and body temperature. Athletes use this to reduce fatigue after events. The most common stimulants include amphetamines, which can be found in regular table medicine, and there's cocaine, ecstasy, and methylphenidate. And the risks vary for each drug, but most of these drugs are very addictive. And some new quote-unquote addictive stimulants are nicotine and caffeine. They've just been categorized as stimulants. And then next are beta blockers. Beta blockers work to block the effects of adrenaline, so it slows down the heart rate, it reduces your blood pressure, anxiety, and muscle cramps, and it improves the athlete's ability to focus. So the main thing with this one is for athletes who need a steady hand. So that includes archery, shooting, and even pool players. And the last one are diuretics. And this is used to promote the production of urine, and they are used by athletes for weight loss, and they're helpful for sports where weight loss is critical. So the main thing is boxing. But right before a boxing match, or for a boxing match, the boxer is 145 pounds, and by the time 24 hours before his match, he has to meet his weight, which is like 130 pounds. So he has to meet that weight by using diuretics. Well, if he wants to cheat. And now we will watch a video about doping.
Hey there, Welcome to Life Noggin. Would you take performance-enhancing drugs that could help you become an Olympic champion? What if that drug had some serious negative side effects? These drugs are banned in sports, but that doesn't stop some athletes from taking them. So what do? And how do they work? Let's start off with the most famous of these drugs, anabolic steroids. When these are taken, the body breaks them down into smaller molecules that can enter cells and bind to a structure called an androgen receptor. Normally, testosterone binds to this, but anabolic steroids can too. And from here, the real magic begins. See, once the androgen receptor is activated, your body starts to produce more proteins during the process of anabolism. The cells in your skeletal muscles start to replicate, and this means that your muscles will start to grow and you'll become stronger. In fact, in men, exercise and steroids could lead to a 38% increase in strength, and potentially even more for women. And not only that, but anabolic steroids can also help athletes train harder and recover faster by shortening catabolism, the process in which proteins are broken down into amino acids. But of course, not all the effects of anabolic steroids are positive. It can cause acne, high blood pressure, and male pattern baldness in both men and women. They can cause men's testicles to shrink and decrease sperm count, and increase your risk for prostate cancer. And women using these steroids can develop facial hair, a deepened voice, and their periods may change or even completely stop. So seriously, don't use these. But what if an athlete isn't really concerned with muscle strength, but rather wants to improve their endurance? This is where blood doping comes in handy. But again, this is a bad move. So bad, in fact, that Lance Armstrong was stripped of all 7 of his Tour de France victories and was banned from the sport for life. The goal of blood doping is to increase the amount of oxygen-carrying red blood cells in the blood, and this is usually done with either blood transfusions, using your own blood, or by injecting yourself with erythropoietin, a molecule that stimulates the production of more red blood cells. And the basic idea is that the more oxygen that can get to your body's muscles, the more endurance you will have. So does it work? Well, in one study, blood doping increased an athlete's endurance by 34%, and in another, an athlete was able to run 8 kilometers on a treadmill 44 seconds faster than before. That might not sound like a lot, but when these athletes are competing with the best of the best, every second counts. Now, these are just the tip of the iceberg. Other performance-enhancing drugs include human growth hormone, which helps increase athletes' sprinting capacity by up to 4% and increases muscle growth as well. But trust me when I say that if you are an athlete, it's probably better to just train the old-fashioned way, with a lot of hard work and sweat. Work it, baby. Excluding any of the negative health effects, using these drugs means that you're cheating. And in the professional world, that definitely shouldn't be taken lightly. So, do you think the Olympics should allow doping? Will it push the human limit forward? Our good friend Vanessa from Braincraft discusses it here.
Between 1 to 3% of elite athletes test positive for the presence of at least one banned substance.
As always, I'm Blacko. This has been Life Noggin. Don't forget to keep on thinking.
So, has the use of PEDs become normalized? And the answer is yes. The reasons are the fans want athletes to become more exceed normative limits and put their bodies on the line. And number 2, media stories about the athletes are no longer shocking. And when you hear about an athlete doping, it's just a normal occurrence and nothing really happens or changes your life. Power and performance sports encourage general overconformance to the norms of sport because they want the athletes to be even better than they can be naturally. So that's why they use doping to enhance their physical ability and skill level. And coaches and teammates also encourage this type of defiant behavior to win because winning a championship equates to greatness and everyone wants to be great. And then using substances is not immoral or weak, rather it's just to improve their game. So everyone's just using these pills to reduce pain and recover so they can win more because everyone plays weak or not 100% anyways. And lastly, the athletes give a clear indication that they see doping as a normalized phenomenon, meaning that most athletes know that they're using it and other people are using it. And hence the NFL, everyone uses painkillers. So that's one example. Next, the war on doping. War on doping, this approach is used in a war on doping is the absolutist approach. And number 1 is any use of banned performance-enhancing substances is defiant. And then number 2, the IOC, or International Olympic Committee, and the World Anti-Doping Association, and the USA Doping Association guidelines say that doping is fundamentally contrary to the spirit of the sport. And then number 3, new technologies that improve vision, cognitive alertness, brain function, response time, strength, and speed are being developed at a record pace. And the alternatives to the war on doping. Players do not dope because they lack character or are victims of evil or forced by external causes. Rather it's unequivocally accept and conform to the norms of the sport ethic. Number 2, it's a part of a sport system in which therapies and supplements are needed to recover from intense training and competition schedules over which they have little control. And moving on to the doping cases. So, we'll be talking about Lance Armstrong, the Russian Olympic doping scandal, Ben Johnson, and the Olympic doping statistics. And then lastly, Julian Edelman. So Lance Armstrong, he was born in 1971 and was an athlete at a young age. He took up triathlons early and became a professional triathlete. So his best out of the 3 roles in the triathlons was cycling. So that's why he transitioned to cycling, and then he dominated the cycling world after his battle with testicular cancer. He then won 7 Tour de France, but he was stripped of his accomplishments, and that was because of his PD usage. And the type of PEDs he used erythropoietin to raise his blood cell count, blood transfusions to increase his oxygen usage, and then corticosteroids to decrease swelling of his legs, because after racing your legs will swell up like crazy, and testosterone injections to also increase red blood cell count. And then for the Russian doping scandal, this is a defiant overconforming that is forced by the state, and this was most of the sport. Russian athletes were under state-sponsored doping. So in May 2016, Grigory Rodchenkov and Yulia Stepanova, former anti-lab boss, became a whistleblower, meaning they told on the Russians that they told the IOC that the Russians were doping. And then the Russian athletes cheated at the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi due to state-sponsored doping. In 2016, the IOC imposed a blanket ban on Russian athletes at the 2016 Olympics in Rio. Then, after that, in 2018, cleared Russian athletes can compete at the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea under a neutral flag, meaning that Russia is completely out of the Olympics until further notice. And here you just want to see the numbers on how many Russian athletes were doping. And then they even doped in Paralympic sports, which was insane to me. And this is Ben Johnson, he who is a Canadian sprinter who won 2 Olympic bronze medals and an Olympic gold medal. He set the world records in the 100-meter race at the 1987 World Championships in athletics and the 1988 Summer Olympics, and he beat his record from the World Championships at the Summer Olympics. And he took anabolic steroids and he tested positive for stanozolol. Ironically, he didn't use that type of steroid since it made him tight. Instead, he preferred the use of Furazabol. He claimed that a teammate during a party drugged his beer. After he was suspended, he attempted to come back. He failed to qualify for the 1991 World Championships in Tokyo, but made the Canadian Olympic team again in 1992 in Barcelona, Spain. In 1993, he won the 50-meter on January 7th in Grenoble, France, but right after the race, he was found guilty of doping for testosterone this time. And then, even after that, he tried again and again and again, but no one wanted to race him because he was a cheater. In many races, no one wanted to race him, so he would race by himself. And here are the doping statistics in 2016 in the Olympics. So this graph illustrates the percentage of positive tests for Olympic and non-Olympic sports. The use of doping in non-Olympic sports is very high, but the use of doping in Olympic sports is lower because there is a much higher penalty when you dope inside the Olympics. For example, if you were to dope in use PEDs in an NFL, then you wouldn't get punished as hard. As per Josh Gordon, he used PEDs in the NFL, but he was only suspended for a year, but he was able to come back. But many people in the Olympics, they're banned for life. So here's another example of PED usage. Julian Edelman is a wide receiver for the New England Patriots, and he tested positive for an unrecognizable substance, that's PEDs, and he was only given a 4-game suspension. While in the Olympics, that would be a ban. This is another example of the divine conformity, and the reason for this is New England's culture of winning. And people want to win, so they have to do more than the norm. And then WADA is the World Anti-Doping Agency. It's founded by the IOC. They monitor the World Anti-Doping Code. The document harmonizes all anti-doping regulations in all sports and countries. It includes a list of all banned substances and methods. And this is how they do it.
An athlete trying to cheat by taking performance-enhancing drugs has become a common controversy in the world of sport. Anti-doping programs around the globe have been put in place to help preserve integrity at all levels of competition. The World Anti-Doping Agency oversees these anti-doping programs, guided by the World Anti-Doping Code. But how exactly do these agencies stay a step ahead of cheaters? Testing can occur during a competition such as the Olympics. Being selected can be the result of a finishing position, a random selection method, or in some cases, a targeted test. Outside of competition, elite athletes are required to tell their anti-doping agency where they could be at any given time. Doping control officers can show up at these locations at any time to collect a urine or blood sample. Once an officer asks an athlete to provide a sample, the athlete cannot leave the officer's sight. This includes watching the athlete pee into a cup. During the test, athletes are required to pull their shirt up to their mid-torso, drop their pants to their knees, and roll up their sleeves to their biceps. The athlete must fill the cup with at least 90 milliliters of urine, about the size of a perfume bottle, which can be challenging if the specimen is collected after an event and the athlete is dehydrated. To protect the integrity of the tests, athletes select their own sample bottles. They then divide their urine into A and B samples, so there is a backup in the event of a positive result. Each bottle has a number that corresponds to a number on a collection form, and the athlete checks to make sure they match. At no time does an officer touch the bottles, which are sent off to a lab with no personal identification markers. Each sample goes through a variety of tests, as technicians check for steroids, hormones, masking agents, stimulants, blood doping, and gene doping. They're looking for traces of any of the items included on WADA's list of banned substances. Results are sent to the anti-doping organization as well as WADA. In the event of a positive test, the athlete has the right to a hearing and an appeal.
And this is the summary. And athletes dope not because they're evil, but because they want to win. They continue to do deviant activities to enhance and further their ability. It is hard to win, so they do it by any means when necessary. And they also compete with the owners and the fans to stay relevant and to get paid. Ethics and morality go out the window because everyone wants to win and everyone wants to be good. And here are the references. Thank you for watching my presentation.